We have Dr. Sanjay Bahl, Director General CERT-In. Dr. Bahl, can we have a round of applause for our speakers, please? Thank you so much. Dr. Oberoi with Google. Dr. Pawan Dugal. We've got David Wroe from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Great. I'll let the speakers introduce themselves. Meanwhile, we've got one speaker from Microsoft who's joining in. Right? We can start with David.
Thank you, Kanishk, and thank you so much for having me here. It's a real honour. It's been an amazing few days. I've been wandering around the building since Monday, and I just want to say how incredible it is to see so many young, keen, hungry, enthusiastic people who've all got their own startups that they're working on, or they're finishing their studies and thinking about what they're going to do next. It's both intimidating and hugely impressive. So it's great to be here. I've got a national security and international policy background, so I don't have a technical background. I will very much be coming at these conversations from a geopolitical perspective and thinking about, talking about how we cooperate. Those countries. And Australia, my home country, not part of the global south, but certainly included in the countries that are not close to becoming technical AI superpowers anytime soon. So I think all of those countries that aren't a great power in AI need to think about how they work together closely. So that's the perspective I'll be coming from. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Pawan Dugal. I'm a lawyer in the Supreme Court. I work on the intersection of law and technology. I'm currently heading the Global Artificial Intelligence Accountability Law and Governance Institute. I also have been working on AI accountability, liability, and more significantly, now trying to see how nation states can come up with new legal frameworks for the purposes of holistic AI sovereignty as we actually go forward, apart from doing various other things. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Oberoi. I am working as Director Strategic Engagements and Chief Security Advisor for Asia Pacific with Google. But I must not forget my roots, especially since two of my batchmates are sitting in the audience. I'm an Indian Police Service officer retired and 92 batch. And my last posting was as Executive Director for Interpol, looking after technology and innovation. Thank you.
So there's, three doctors, Dr. Gaur, Dr. Dugal, Dr. Oberoi, and now we have Mandar coming in from Microsoft. So my name is Sanjay Bahl, and I'm the Director General for the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team. I think that should be more than enough, because now we got a panel, he'll have to start, otherwise we're getting out of time.
Yes, and before I start, I think I need to thank the organizers, the team from Ministry of Electronics Information Technology, Arshil, Saroji, thank you so much for getting us here. We appreciate. If you can have one group photograph with everyone, and then we can quickly start. One. Yeah. We are also joined by Mandar Kulkarni, who is the National Security Officer for Microsoft. Mandar, you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Thank you. I think you did it. We can get started. So I'm National Security for Microsoft India and South Asia. In that role, I work closely with all the cyber security agencies in India, including what Dr. Bahl leads, for collaboration between Microsoft, our threat intel, and how we can work with those agencies. Number one. A little bit more elaborate introduction. I set up Microsoft's cloud 12 years back in India, and I led their cloud business for a few years before moving into national security. Thanks.
Great. I'm Ganesh Gaur. I'm the founder of India Future Foundation. We are a policy think tank working on the intersection of technology, policy, and geopolitics for last 7 years. Thank you, everyone. I'll start with Dr. Bahl. We are here to talk about AI safety and security, but today we see a big gap between the global south and the global north in terms of AI safety preparedness, AI safety resources. And this big divide leads to a constant fight in terms of what the governments can do, the role which tech companies can play. So my key question to Dr. Bahl is, Dr. Bahl, if you were to bridge this gap, which we are facing between global south when it comes to AI risk management and incident response, what could be key things that we could do?
See, if you've carefully looked into this space requires a lot of capital, it requires talent, and it requires energy. So if you have a gap in capital, you are challenged. If you have a gap in talent, you will be challenged. And if you have a gap in energy, you'll be. Fortunately for India, we don't have a gap in the talent part. We have abundant talent, and we can provide that talent to the rest of the world. Now, those who have the capital will obviously pull that talent. And now we have to be very clear as to how we keep that talent here. That's number one. From an energy perspective, if you see, there are challenges, what you see in Europe, they are facing already. So if there are some countries who and some companies who have these things, they will obviously be growing, and then that divide starts increasing. So that's where the challenge for deficit in compute and data and models will start increasing. Now, if that divide increases, how are you going to handle those situations? Also, if you see, today there's a challenge in terms of transparency of these models. There's a challenge in terms of the behavioral ability of these AI models. There's also, most of them are, of course, they're from two countries, if you see primarily, and the companies there. So there is a challenge in terms of the data which they're being trained on and the linguistic aspects. Because how do you address the local Indian dialects, etc. Okay, so now I'm not saying just Indian, but if you look at any South, global South, so any of those, so if you look at the African side or any of this, LATAM, etc. So, we have to start addressing it from that perspective, and also there is a lack of maturity of frameworks and regulations. So, if we are not in a position to address these aspects, we will be challenged from the perspective that you have raised. I hope that addresses some portion of what you have.
Absolutely. David, I want to bring you in here. Dr. Bahl mentioned two countries and the global divide we have, and there's so much dependence on those two countries. What's your view from an Australian standpoint? What do you think needs to be done?
I'll borrow your microphone. Thanks, Kanishk. Thank you for the question. So yeah, I won't repeat what Sanjay has said. I think all of he's covered those concrete points very, very adequately. So I would take it back to start with just what are the risks and safety, what are the risks and dangers that we're actually talking about? What are the threats? I mean, there's a range of risks. One is obviously misaligned and uncontrolled artificial intelligence. That doesn't have to mean, I hate the term rogue AI because it conjures up those sort of destructive images. It's not necessarily that concrete when we're talking about unaligned or uncontrolled AI. It could simply be artificial intelligence models and tools that start to lead us down a direction that if we stop and think about it, we don't want to go down. I think we're already in, social media is arguably unaligned at the moment. There are lots of outcomes of social media platforms that we all agree are undesirable, and yet they are sort of baked into that model, and it's very difficult to come back from them. Another risk is, the strategic danger that you're rivals in the world are going to become more competent and more capable than you. That's obviously a risk for countries, well, all countries outside of the US and China, pretty much. Even those two superpowers themselves are constantly worried about, who's going to take the lead. It's enormously consequential. We have the risks of rogue actors, like, the classic case being, the extremist or the extremist organization, or even just the disgruntled individual who takes an AI model or tool, jailbreaks it, uses it to create some sort of deadly weapon, such as a bioweapon. And then there are just the disruptive risks. Let's say everything goes right in the progress of artificial intelligence. It becomes highly capable. It will have disruptive effects on jobs, on the basic economic models that have applied since Adam Smith invented the field back in late 1700s, whenever it was. The social and political upheaval that would follow from that, and beyond the economy. I heard the term, there was an excellent session yesterday that I attended where the term cognitive sovereignty was used, and I found that to be a really, really useful phrase. I mean, it was that basic idea that if you don't have ownership and a full sense of rights over your own attention and your own awareness of the world, then really you don't have everything. That is a sovereign individual right that we should all hold on to and regard as very, very precious. Now, I would just point to the fact that the superpowers are themselves vulnerable to a lot of those risks. So there isn't actually necessarily a divide between the superpowers and the non-superpowers, or the global north and the global south. A lot of these risks are across the board. The thing that I would point to most strongly in terms of what we can do, what all of our countries can do together to try and fill the gap that does exist, is through cooperation. We need to share. We need to cooperate. We need to sort of build our understanding together and develop a kind of a network of countries that can sort of push back against these threats and risks.
Sure. I think that's a very important point in terms of building collaboration. And I think where the role of big tech plays extremely important role. There are companies like Google, which work both in the global south and in global north, and they have tremendous opportunity and also the resources. So, Dr. Oberoi, what do you think companies like Google to do when it comes to embedding safety and security by design and preventing misuse of AI?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And I would say Google being a hyperscaler, one of the fundamental duties is to provide a secure infrastructure. And when we say secure infrastructure, and I would definitely like to refer to Google's Safe AI framework, which has basically 6 pillars, but I'll stick to 3 interesting points. One is the infrastructure security, where it is secure by design at each stage of the AI life cycle. And how do we do that would also depend how secure our systems are. And then comes the issue of providing automated guardrails. And when I say automated guardrails, I mean things like model armor, where we are looking at the responses as well as the prompts, so that harms through things like prompt injection cannot happen, or while giving out responses, we are not exfiltrating any sensitive data, so those things can be brought in there. And the third aspect, which I would say is basically on the shared responsibility model. And that is where each and everybody has to perform their role so that we are able to take care of the security. And And it is here, I would say, the role of big tech companies like Google would be in terms of providing tools to do this, whether it is, let's say, Synth ID, where we are looking at watermarking various deepfakes, etc. So that is very important where we can do it. Or even agentic identity management is concerned. I'm also tempted here when I talk about identity management in terms of based on my previous experience in law enforcement, the big attribution gap which exists. So unless we are able to bridge that, we would be running into problems, and that's where the security per se, what hyperscalers can do, if we compare it in terms of a safe city, hyperscalers are providing infrastructure like roads, etc. But the ultimate security comes through the collaborative policing, where each and every stakeholder has to play a part. So that is, therefore, unless all of us play our part, we won't be able to ensure that. I'll pause here and see.
Great, thank you. Mandar, when it comes to shared responsibility, what role do you think people like you need to play? You've been the national security officer, been doing work on cyber, but the rules have changed now. It's AI, the ages of AI. So what do you think has really changed for someone like you when it comes to shared responsibility?
I think what you said, shared responsibility, is the key term here. And while sometimes we talk about EU being over-regulated, they actually provided a good framework through EU AI Act, right? Because many times we get very fixated when we talk about AI on models, right? How good are models, how safe are models, and all that. But I think what we need to understand is AI is not only model, right? There are multiple layers, multiple tiers that we need to secure when we talk about AI. We need to secure data, we need to secure models, of course, and Dr. Bahl talked about model being black box, not explainable or transparent, so that's a layer. So data, model, content, infrastructure, and then the application layer. We need to, an identity. Mr. Oberoi talked about identity. I think those are the layers that we need to secure, right? Why is that? Your model could be good, but how is your application secure or not will determine ultimately whether your AI gets compromised. AI is not only model. You're not interacting with raw models. Most of us interact with an interface, right? It could be Copilot, it could be Gemini, it could be GPT, Chat GPT. We interact with that. And I'm talking about the simplest of AI application. As you get into a little bit more complex application, the business applications where AI is going to really make an impact, the application, the infrastructure, the data layer is going to be, an identity layer is going to be even more critical. So with that, I think shared responsibility becomes extremely critical, or is very, very important, because the responsibility is not only with one party. So it's not only the guys who are developing models, right? They are providing you raw model, right? Then there is responsibility on the people who develop applications using those models. Then there are guys who are using those applications, right? A bank, a government institution, or anyone else, right? That's the third layer. And fourth is us, who actually end consume that application. So there is responsibility that is across those 7 layers in AI application stack, but also across these 4. So it's a 7x4 matrix, right? Those 4 people or stakeholders who build or use AI application have the responsibility. I'll give you one simple example, right? There was a very popular trend that came up when Chat GPT created that Ghibli images, right? Everybody uploaded their pictures in it, right? Now, did we really think about how we are uploading, what we are uploading, where it is going to go? No disrespect to what OpenAI did, but the frenzy that we saw is the risk. And that was a very simple example because that happened to us in consumer life. Very similar things are happening in business, right? When people want to do, let's say, summarization, right? They are taking help of either an AI application that is deployed by an enterprise, so governed by their IT and security team, or many cases, if there is no AI application that is provided, users are using application this is like a second generation, right? All of us dealt with shadow IT since cloud came. Now we are dealing with shadow AI, which is even more difficult for IT teams to manage and govern. So that's going to be the important thing, right? One, how we pin the responsibility and secure all 7 layers of AI application. Second, how we pin responsibility on all the 4 constituents. Holding only the model or only the end user responsible will not work. We have to distribute that responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Bahl, please go ahead.
No, while Mandar has talked about this 7 into 4, there's one thing which is conveniently, or I don't know, conveniently, and also Dr. Oberoi, they've missed out, is you will still have challenges, and that is where the state would require certain details, and that's where, whether you call them through the regulator or the law enforcement agencies, etc., demanding details, and then that is where the shared responsibility aspect comes in, but then that shared responsibility suddenly disappears from the big tech, because then you start coming through MLAT, and you come through all sorts of other channels, and that information is never received. So I don't know what happened to shared responsibility at that time.
That's
No,
a
sir,
tricky one. Mandar, I'll
Let me
let you
respond for a minute.
Mandar, you don't need to answer that. Okay. I want you to hold on to it right now. This is getting really interesting, right? You've got a regulator and you've got a big tech.
So
That's-
this was no guardrails, right?
Absolutely, no guardrails. So, Dr. Duggal, right? And we'll bring in Dr. Oberoi as well. Dr. Duggal, when we talk about those 7 layers can't be secured either by the developer or the deployer or by the platform alone. It is collective responsibility, right? So, how do you think the liability and the accountability needs to evolve? Because we are talking about securing those 7 layers, and not one platform owns everything. You have got different platform providers. The AI developers are different. So how do you evolve in this space?
It's very clear that it's very clear that the 6 major AI laws in the world so far, the European Union AI Act, Chinese 2 laws on generative AI and AI labeling, South Korean law, Japan's basic AI law, Hungarian law, and El Salvador law, are nothing but a classical example of 6 blind men trying to describe an elephant. None of these laws have actually gone ahead and started addressing the fundamental issue of accountability. Yes, the UAI approach of low risk, high risk is a great starting point, but ultimately you will have to make things accountable. 2025, the issue was, should we regulate AI or not? That's no longer the position in 2026. 2026 is that once AI causes harm to humans, who's going to be accountable? And that's the reason accountability becomes of crucial necessity. If you're wanting self-regulation to govern accountability, then you are on the wrong platform, because the train is never going to arrive. You will never see self-regulation promoting accountability. Why? Because monies are involved, finances are involved, effort is involved. That's the reason we'll have to come up with legal principles to govern accountability. In January 2026, I launched the AI Accountability Framework, which is a collation of all legal principles, doctrines, and philosophies, which lawmakers across the world need to keep in mind as they come up with new laws on AI accountability. How about liability? Can I just make only the coder liable? Can I make the company liable? I think I come up with the new concept of a graded liability model, where whenever a harm gets caused to a human, there'll have to be equal, or shall I say proportionate responsibility of various stakeholders. Some bit for the coder, some bit for the company who's giving the said model, someone for the company who's marketing, and someone even for the data principal, the user. I mean, I recently got this case where this guy was working with a particular AI model in central India, and he's obviously been bullied in class, and he decides to get solutions from AI. AI says the best solution is go commit suicide. He argues against that, fails. After 3 months, AI is very successful. This man asks AI, what's the best way to end my life? He says, go and slit your wrists. He slits the wrists, thinking that's the end of the life. Parents come in and find him in a pool of blood, take him to the hospital. He's now out of danger, but his hand is paralyzed. Who's going to be accountable in such a scenario? I think we'll have to have graded responsibilities, but for that, you will have to have a regulatory approach. You cannot just leave it to self-regulation. You cannot leave it to cooperation. And how about accountability in terms of transparency? Today I'm dealing with AI as a black box. I have a fundamental human right towards reality, towards ensuring that my cognitive faculties are not interfered with or colored with by AI. We need to incorporate all that as part of cognitive neuro rights of citizens, as part of the legal frameworks that we talk about. Maybe we could look at an AI constitution, because the existing constitutions of countries, including in India, don't really have been, shall I say, made ready for the AI age in a scenario like this. So we'll have to look at issues of transparency. Can we come up with an algorithmic transparency protocol, which is mandating companies, guys, come up with these levels of transparency in order to make your AI model or AI algorithm more explainable? And more significantly, can you be the repository of AI rights? Today, the advent of AI brings in new AI rights for the users. Nobody's talking about them. Today, when a 399 pack is launched in a country like India, it's not that world-class services are given to you because you are kind or because you are so special. Sorry. You are the fulcrum of all the data which the big tech companies want to ultimately collect. And if you talk of accountability, I have to also talk of a connected area of cognitive colonialism. Indians have started walking towards back cognitive colonialism. They are ready to become cognitive slaves of big tech companies, ready to mortgage their cognitive faculties at the doors of AI, thinking, well, that's the best of the world. Well, hold on. With more Alzheimer's coming in your way because of your cognitive incapabilities, you have a bigger problem. And therefore, I think the need ultimately to secure your cognitive spaces will have to be an integral part of the accountability governance model as you go forward. You'll have to make them liable. But where do we make them liable? What legal remedies do we provide? Where do I actually sue them? Do I sue them within my own country? Or shall I say the El Salvador model, who says, look, use an El Salvador algorithm, no problem. Wherever you are, harm is caused to you, you come to El Salvador and sue me here. Only then will I be able to look at it. I think
Very interesting point made by Dr. Dugal. One is the whole AI safety repository, and the second part is particularly around your cognitive colonialism. And I was on a TV panel yesterday, and we spoke about how Gen Z was becoming addicted, and their brain was getting rot because all the kind of content they watch. When I go to business schools and I do leadership sessions, I find much of the learning is not happening through classroom, but it is actually happening through reels, which is really bad because you have some superficial knowledge of a subject, but you don't know what it is there in the depth. So if you were to make an AI safety repository to bring more safety, security, and more ownership between regulators and developers in emerging economies, what are some of the key things we need to do? And this question is for anyone who wants to take up from the panel. Dr. Oberoi, you want to chime in?
So in terms of the repositories, and I assume you are referring to the regulatory repositories, what I would say that there is a need for these kind of repositories, because we need to learn from each other. We need to have repository, at least regional hubs or regional alliances whereby we can exchange what is happening. At the same time, one point which I think Pawanji mentioned was with regard to the ability of these regulations to be sensitive to the local languages, cultural nuances. That is very important. So that also has to be kept in mind. But at the same time, we also, in order to encourage innovation part, we also have to provide for the regulatory sandboxes. And that's where a lot of things need to be developed. And that's where probably if you look at the overall environment about what all is happening on the regulatory front, that comes into picture. And so I'll summarize by one, collaboration in terms of repositories, whether it is at regional level or global level, ideally at global level, but at the same time, being sensitive to the cultural nuances and the local language, dialects, etc., so that our notions of biases are not influenced only by the Western norms. So therefore, it has to be sensitive to the local nuances also. At the same time, providing an environment for innovation through sandboxes. And I think I'll refer to one of the previous comments which was made in terms of providing enough regulations to make sure that we do not cause any harm. But at the same time, I'll just like to point that we have to be careful that we do not curb the innovation part. So it has to be, as has been one of the sutras of the 7 sutras, that innovation is much more important than the restraint. So we have to be more positive on that aspect. I'll pause.
Interesting. David, how do you build interoperability in AI governance without compromising national sovereignty innovation?
Okay, thanks, Kanishk. Well, I mean, there are certainly some foundational and fundamental things that you can do while still allowing for a lot of room to move at a national sovereign level. So, I mean, you can agree on some really basic things, like, for instance, the illegitimate use of AI to carry out force or violence, for instance, like a bioterror attack. I think everyone can agree that that is something for which there should be very, very strict guardrails. But at the same time, you can allow for a lot of sort of national approaches to allow for sort of local conditions. But I think, like, at a more basic level, I think we need to get away from this idea that every commitment to international cooperation is an undermining of sovereignty. Like, that's actually the wrong way to think about it. All international agreements require some compromise, and you compromise because it creates a common set of understandings where everyone is better off. You might not be able to do whatever you want, but across the board, with each international agreement, everyone is better off. It lifts all boats. That's the whole idea of multilateralism, of international cooperation. So we've got to get away from this idea that it's a undermining of sovereignty. And I would point to the fact that, with AI being a very strong example of this, what could be worse for national sovereignty than having excessive control in the hands of private sector companies, organizations in other countries? It's not an attack on big tech at all. It's just the point that a private sector company that is not accountable to your state in any way is a much greater danger to your sovereignty.
Absolutely.
Than,
we saw that during the time Grok was creating all those filthy images, right? Certain countries decided to ban Grok and X, and it's only after that the response came in. Certain countries just limited themselves to leaving threats, open threats, I would call those. Dr. Bahl, any thoughts on this? I know you're looking on the other side, right?
No, I think David has made a few very critical points. One, in his first session, he mentioned about people should be sovereign, and you're going to have challenges now when you're looking at implants coming in and AI trying to tell you what to do. Now, are you thinking on your own, or someone else is thinking for you? What happens if more and more people in a nation start getting those implants? Who's driving you? It's probably those big tech companies. And that's what Dr. Dougal talked about, colonialism. So you become a slave again. And then what's happening from the perspective, if you see some of these research reports, right in somewhere in the top few, India is using AI. The median age is 28 years. Whereas if you see that, where does US stand? It's somewhere around towards the bottom end. Why? Has someone thought about it? Why is that so? I don't know what the right answer should be, but my view is that I want you to use it where I don't want to use it, so that you become a slave to me. Right? I will do critical thinking because that's one of the requirements as we go forward, critical thinking. You have no critical thinking anymore. I have the critical thinking. I will be developing the models. I'll develop what I want, and you use them. So you become a slave again, as Dr. Dougal mentioned. So I think there are multiple things which are happening. We have to be careful about it. And then on the other side, we say AI is going to have an impact on the economy. And as David just mentioned, the companies are driven by commercial aspects. They want to make profits. I was just talking before we entered the room that if AI agents, models, and when you're looking at cognitive AI, etc., they are going to be doing all the work for you. So you will have a challenge of resources actually earning money. So if there is no earning of money, where is the income tax? So if these models are going to do the work, where does the tax go, or where do the profits go? It's not to your country, it's somewhere else. So what happens to the governments? Is it going to actually create an economic impact or a drain? And then what happens to your yearly budgets, which come that income tax itna ho gaya, income tax utna ho gaya. So kiske upar tax hoga?
Absolutely, that's a very valid point. And Mandar, I've been holding you, so I think now is the time. There's a lot of questions. You want to chime in and give some of those key answers. There's a lot of work you've been doing in this space, working with different regulators, whether it's CERT, I4C, NCI, PCC, right? So please.
Thanks, Kanishk. So, 3 points here. Number one, kind of a response to what Dr. Bahl mentioned. So that 4 pillars for accountability, big tech is one of them, right? So we are not saying in the 4 layers, right? There is of course big tech. So when you pin accountability, when there is a regulatory framework, everybody, including the big tech, should be included. You can't keep a stakeholder out. That's point number one. So the accountability framework that both even Dr. Duggal talked about has to cover everybody. Right? Great example actually, if even the end users, we ourselves in our personal life can't escape. So that's point number one. Point number two, one of the things that we will have to do, right? India is not only net user, any technology, right? We are also the service provider, right? We develop application. What we do great, India, is diffusion. Right? You look at the biggest success that has come out of India, our DPI stack, right? Jam, DPI stack, right? We didn't build Kubernetes, right? Or we didn't build any of those many of those technologies. We did definitely build a lot of them, but we used to diffuse technology, right? Everybody, without we knowing what technology drives it, we use Aadhaar, we use mobile, we use the entire payment, all of that, right? So where we are great at is diffusing technology. In my opinion, that's something that we need to also keep in mind when we look at AI. Should India develop AI, whether it is models or chips or all of that? Definitely. But while doing that, we should not slow down and we should use diffusion. Because if we slow down, our competition is not going to slow down, right? We have countries to our left, countries to our right, and all around us, right? Who are investing big on AI. They are doing it all. They are developing their own models, they are developing their chips, but they are great at diffusion. So the question that we need to ask is, do we want to slow down and wait for everything, or we want to take AI and ensure that it goes to the bottommost section of our societies? What did DPI do? It got services to the people who were deprived of the services, whether it is banking, whether it is access to technology, right? They don't know technology, right? When somebody, a street vendor is using UPI, he doesn't know what it runs on, right? But it solves a big problem for him or her. Now, one of the questions that we all need to understand and address is, how do we use AI for diffusion? How do we make that work for the common man? The big techs and big enterprises, both Indian and multinationals, they will take care of themselves, right? From how do they use AI, right? And most of us in the commercial segment are working with large enterprises. There will be push-pull, there will be regulatory guardrails that will come in. We'll definitely welcome that. But that will happen. I think we need to replicate our success on DPI and ensure that AI works for the last person on the ground. I think that will really make this Impact Summit useful. If we can take AI, get out of boardrooms and get to the commonmost people and change their life. In my opinion, I think that will be the success of this summit.
While we spoke on DPIs, another key element is the AI-generated misinformation, which is impacting public discourse and election today. So, Mandar, if we were to build cross-sector collaboration to prevent large-scale trust erosion, particularly with the kind of content we are seeing being generated on different social media platforms, and it's a combined collective responsibility. What do you think needs to be done?
Yeah, I think great question, and I think I'm sure CERT is working on a lot of that. I foresee, but I think it is again a three-layered approach, right? First, the industry will need to come out with something which is a consensus, right? For example, a lot of content is going to come out of the big techs. So first, we need to agree, and there are efforts, right? C2PA is one of the frameworks. But I think everybody needs to come on that platform. That's number one. But that will not be enough, because while Google's and Microsoft would probably ensure that the content is provenance and all that, there are going to be raw actors who will not. So that's where I think the role of CERT and everybody else, even some law enforcement, will need to come in. Sorry, just one. So three layer. First is the big tech, or we create frameworks which are more voluntary. Second, there will be a regulation at maybe country level at that. And third, it will be sectorial. Things like RBI and all of them will need to come in. I think we'll need all. Unfortunately, we are seeing gaps. We are seeing industry doing it, not everybody is on board. We are seeing laws coming in, not all countries are there, and even regulators. There are various levels of maturity. All three things will need to happen so that we take care of both the legal tech as well as the rogue tech.
Great, thank you. Can we bring in collective responsibility? That's the key part. He mentioned about collective responsibility. Is it really possible to build collective responsibility? Can you get the regulators and the big tech to agree? That's the $1 million question. You want to chime in on this?
I was just going to make the point that to me, with something like mis and disinformation, the ultimate backstop has got to be the resilience of your citizens. You are not going to stop deepfake disinformation. I think that genie is so far out of the bottle that the bottle is just not even there anymore. You're not going to stop it. So the only way to deal with it is to have critically thinking citizens who are, from primary school, from elementary school, from primary school, from kindergarten, from the time they're crawling around. They need to be helped to develop those skills. That means that they can resist disinformation, they can spot it, they can think critically about it, and that is the solution. You're not going to stop it from the government.
Dr. Dugal, you think we are over-relying on regulation here? What David just mentioned is about citizen being more aware. In a country with 1.4 billion people, you think that level of awareness can be created?
I don't think so. I think we need to be understanding it very clearly. You will have to drive it through regulation, because self-regulation is not working. The Danda model is what's going to work in majority of the third world countries. Also, we'll have to understand that we must start getting empirical evidence. Everybody is saying, well, everything is hunky-dory. But AI started causing harm to humans. In January, I launched the Global AI Harms Registry, which is collating 9 different categories of harms which AI is causing to humans. Once we have the empirical evidence, we will be using it as a basis for developing legal principles for mitigating such harm. But ultimately, why are we so much concerned about regulation? We all want innovation, yes, but innovation is not possible without regulation. You will have to have minimal enabling regulation so as to promote further innovation as we go forward. You are innovating, somebody goes and steals your innovation. What happens? What remedies do you have? What legal frameworks do you have? Unfortunately, I have yesterday's laws which I'm using for the purposes of dealing with tomorrow's challenges, and that doesn't work. Indian IT Act is a 26-year-old legislation, accepting and wanting it to be interpreted in the context of AI when it was never drafted, and keeping that thing in mind is important. What Prime Minister Modi said yesterday was very important. He said India has to have a very graded approach towards regulation. So the message is loud and clear. The regulation has to come in. 200 bills are going to be passed on AI in this very year across the world. So you are saying regulation is not there or over-regulation? Sorry, that's not happening. Regulation will have to start addressing meat by meat, point by point, the various issues as we go forward. Otherwise, the sovereignty of the countries, the security and the integrity of countries shall stand prejudicially.
Thank you, Dr. Oberoi.
I'll go back to the point, Kanishk, which you mentioned in terms of how it has to be a collective responsibility between regulators and tech companies and everyone else also. The point is, going by Pawan's statement regarding that we need regulations, and there is no denying to that fact that regulations are needed. But what is regulation or policy? A policy at the end of the day is just an intent. Ultimately, it has to be enforced. And how do we enforce it? For that, we need technology today. And that is where, therefore, the tech companies' role comes in building those technology, those guardrails, so that the regulations which have been brought by government can be enforced on ground. Today, imagine that the latest guidelines of Rules 2026 of IT Act say that a deepfake closure window, takedown window is 24 hours.
3 hours.
3 hours, sorry. 3 hours, my mistake. So 3 hours, how do we take down that without the appropriate technology? So unless we have that enabling technology, these are just intents without any implementation mechanism.
Dr. Bahl?
So in this last 10 seconds, I mean, all this actually needs to work. The base layer has to be trust. If there is no trust between big tech and the regulators, there's going to be a challenge. There will be gaps. And what David said is correct. You need people or children to be having critical thinking right from beginning, but you also need regulations. But the challenge with regulations, as Dr. Dugal mentioned himself, is you're dealing with yesterday's regulations for tomorrow's challenges. Even if you have today's regulations, you will still be dealing with tomorrow's challenges. So how are you going to be keeping up? So you need regulations which are going to be dynamic. You cannot have regulations made today and then say, I'm still going to be dealing. You will always be in that challenge situation, feedback. That loop is going to be closed only when you are starting to look at dynamic regulations. But the constant thing is going to be what David mentioned, ensure that critical thinking is there so that people understand why these dynamic regulations are required and how do you address them. So I think that is what has to be done, and the layer of trust has to be cemented. Today there's a huge challenge from that perspective. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bahl, for summarizing it. The layer of trust has to be here. Last closing remarks, 15 seconds with everyone. If I were to work with you and build trust and safe AI for the next 5 years, where do I need to start in 2026? Mandar, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think I kind of said this earlier. It will need to be rooted in these three layers, right? Where the industry will need to build a trustworthy framework. There has to be regulation, of course, and a third layer where we do the user education, as David mentioned. It will need to be all three of them. And actually, Dr. Bahl summarized it well. There has to be trust in across three layers, right? All three layers we need to trust with each other and continue.
Thanks. I mean, trust follows safety without stating the obvious. That, I mean, we've got to concentrate on safety. In order to achieve that, I think government needs to be the standard setter for artificial intelligence. This is the most profound technology that humanity will ever invent, ever introduce. There is nothing like the legitimacy of the state to control, well, to direct and guide something so powerful. It cannot be left to the private sector. The role of the state representing the people, the citizens, is absolutely crucial. The government needs to be the standard setter here.
Collaboration and trust with all stakeholders is a given yes, but distrust in AI has to be an even more absolute yes. We must be learning to distrust AI. Why? Because AI has started going rogue. It's acting against human interests. And as we walk towards AGI and ultimately superintelligence, the important issue will be how do we ensure that AI does not work against human interest? Because ultimately AI has become an existential threat. And in that regard, the policy and the legal guardrails have to be put in the development process of AI today. And that's the best way how we can save the trust of all the stakeholders in the AI ecosystem.
Thank you. I would say that going back again for my policing background, that trust and safety, they are recognized when they are invisible. A safety which is visible, where visible efforts are made, it means there is no safety. Today we don't distrust that electricity wires will be leaking in the walls because we trust that, and therefore what has to be done is we have to move away from this philosophical debate. We have to move into a stage of technological engineering enablement so that this trust is built. We have had enough debate about that, and that debate is not going to stop. Technology whose time has come will come, whether we like it or not, so we have to build around it. Thank you.
I think I did summarize earlier, but just as a last statement, when you're looking at trust, safety, security, it'll all, at this point in time, have to be a good balance between art and science. Without both these things, you will not be able to achieve trust, safety, security. And we have enough examples from our old scriptures of ensuring science and art. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before I let my panelists go, if anyone wants to ask any questions, I'll start with.
Maybe two questions you can take.
I can take a couple of questions. So, right, we start with Mr. Maheshwari. Yeah, do you want to
Next
quickly,
session is the one.
Mr. Maheshwari?
Deepak Maheshwari is Senior Policy Advisor at CSEP. So when you're looking at this whole thing around trust, I think what we also need to look at is, as was mentioned earlier, in terms of this whole perpetuation about the tendency and the chances of post-colonial dependency. And I think from that perspective, it is important that the communities, companies, as well as the citizenry and the countries in the global south also get equitable space at this global discussions around 3 E's: equity, ethics, and ecology. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Maheshwari?
Yeah, maybe going forward, what do you think should be the right model for governance or regulation? Not just in view of maybe AI, but maybe such future technologies which are going to be equally harmful and equally transformative.
Or equally beneficial. Yeah, I'll let people face the questions. Anupama, you wanted to ask, right?
Hi. So my question is, this is related to a situation. So at this point, we've all been discussing about humans and AI. My question to all of you is a situation when agents are interacting with each other, and especially when we're talking about agent to agent being developed, concepts like MCP. So if in the next 5 years, it's when the agents which are talking within themselves, and this is when we're building up agents, let's say for government organizations, or let's say companies.
One last question. I want to take up someone from the back, right? Someone's, yeah, you want to go ahead.
I have a quick question. Two gentlemen over here mentioned that onus is on the regulators for making sure there are guardrails in place, and the onus is on the citizens for having critical thinking. But why did the big tech platforms have to rush to release models like LLM models without having the guardrails in place in advance? What was the need for having rushed it all out without ensuring that people were ready to use it more responsibly, especially at a time where organizations like fact-checking organizations are retreating, their budgets are crunching down, and people whose job it is to even detect fake news or fight fake news or fight deep fakes, they themselves are retreating. You'll see the number of fact-checking organizations and fact checkers is also going down. So why not put that guardrail in place first?
Which one do you want to pick up?
Okay, let me pick up the regulation part. I think countries in the global south, particularly India, cannot do a cut, copy, paste. We cannot have an EU model applicable here. Why? Because the ground realities are different. Number two, in the developing countries, going back to regulators or to the legislature and getting amendments is going to be a tall process. So I advocate a principle-based approach. Let's look at broad legal principles which can be effective for narrow AI, agentic AI, AGI, and superintelligence. And then give sectoral regulators the flexibility to come up with sectoral specific regulations. That's the best way going forward. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult because even if I make a law today, in the next 6 months, it's going to be obsolete. The DPDP Act is obsolete vis-a-vis AI because it does not mention AI. So obviously, I'll have to give that flexibility to the government to come up in that regard. And also, we'll have to look at the common minimum denominators. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's look at the experiences of other countries and then try to see how can we go ahead and do things in this regard.
Hello. Hello. what is our strategy about developing the critical thinking among the people? We have millions of people who are studying in higher education, but the way we are teaching, way we are doing the critical thinking is a key part. So are we also thinking of developing a model which will inculcate critical thinking among the people in different domains, not only single domain, but different domain?
We are running out of time. I got your question. Can you just
one.
one last comment and we can have the speakers speak to you offline. They're here, right? Yeah.
I'll take the agency question. I think that the recent Maltbook case was incredible for the fact that if you leave agents in a space together, they don't just sit there and do nothing. That's the most incredible thing about it. Even if the more extreme response, even if the more extreme things that they were saying, some of those were fake because they were actually put in by human beings. But even if you knock off the most extreme ones, they actually don't just sit there and do nothing, they start talking to each other. We are in a really profound new era, and that's why I think a lot of the conversations are actually kind of legacy conversations. I think we're talking as if we're still in the same old world. We're not.
Great.
Actually, we'll have to go and reinvent our legal principles. Actus reus, mens rea are irrelevant today in the context of AI. And therefore, new legal principles, new legal futuristic approaches will have to guide us as we go forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. With this, we are run out of time. I'll thank the mighty team for the support. Can we have a round of applause for our speakers, the audience, and also the team from India Future Foundation? If you can stand up, please. You have been working for the last 20 years. Please come forward, my India Future Foundation team as well. Join us.